Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome back. It is Tuesday, September 3rd, my friends, family. Welcome back, I guess, to another episode of Clown World Gone Wild, for lack of a better way to frame it today. It's just left, right, and center field. The insanity is starting to, I think, come together for some folks. And we're going to build off of what we talked about last night a little bit. It's going to tie into some other stuff and some shenanigans that probably are not coming across your radar. As usual, that's kind of where I make my bread and butter. And I'm not going to lie, folks. Today was a little bit of a tough one. Given the more that this is starting to piece itself together, I think it's becoming even more diabolical what this government it has been up to, the complicity, the treason, all of the mass crimes against humanity and the people of Canada is just you cannot swim through the swamp all day without getting a little bit of it in you from time to time. So today was a bit of a tough one for me to put together, put my face on and come out and talk to everybody again. But you can't fix what you can't see, and so that's kind of I guess the mantra of what keeps me going. And you guys, you guys are out here every day supporting, helping, sharing, doing the things that we need to do to try and beat the insanity that is continuously pummeling us incessantly. So we'll kind of build up on a little bit of more from last night's show. I heard from James Roguski this morning. We're going to touch on his article. And I think the more people think about what's actually happening, the more the light gets put on this political scheme that Trudeau has hatched through the Senate of Canada. I think it has the merit to change the flavor of the direction over the next coming weeks of uncertainty within the political campaigning spectrum. So we're going to cover a lot of ground here tonight, guys. But I'm going to give you guys, the tools that you need to do more to tackle this head on. This is, as lawyer Lisa said last night, we're at kind of that all hands on deck with this, and it doesn't matter what our pronouns or flavors or political stripes or ethnicity is. None of that can matter right now. So we're going to start with my Substack today, just to make sure that everybody gets plugged in there, that you guys have an opportunity to see some of the extras that we don't cover on the show. There was a press release came out today from Glorraine about a pan-Canadian demonstration in front of the Supreme Court this coming Sunday. This is growing in momentum, this case. We had Glorraine on here last week explaining why this is important for Canadians to understand what this means at an international level. It's big, and I'm going to touch on another reason why this is big, because this is part of the embarrassment of this demolition team that has captured our political system through infiltration and syndicate crime level behavior. And the rest of the world needs to know, Canadians are going to start paying the price for this, even at even greater and greater levels. And this international exposure is critically important. So, this is an interesting case with what Glorraine has done. And every day it builds a little bit more understanding for me why this is important today. The next story that I'm gonna going to segue into after Gloraine's talking about what Gloriane is doing is going to kind of put a little bit of a cherry on top of why this kind of stuff is important. So, and kudos to her for the bravery. I can't imagine, it's tough enough fighting the corruption within our establishment here, but to go to a foreign country and to embarrass our entire judiciary here in Canada is next level courage and bravery. And like she said when she was on the show, we are really good at getting educated. But as we've heard, we've learned over the last couple of years that without action, education really means nothing. I think it was Dr. Remo once upon a time that said we'll just end up being the most educated corpses in the graveyard if we don't combine action to education. And Gloriane added courage, and she's 100% correct on that. I look around this country, around the world for that matter, because this is happening everywhere. What we're up against, just at varying volumes. I see a lot of see a lot of people that are in stasis. The deer in the headlight, thing, and it takes courage to do to stick your head up every day and take the shots that come along with that. So a couple of stories here. Yesterday's show with Lisa, we really broke down Bill C-293, which is one of the bombardments that the artillery shells coming in from the hashtag WEF World Economic Forum Fourth Reich, in bringing us to heel under the New World Order. So these words matter now more than ever. So understanding the pieces and how big they are and monumental they are to what's going on in the right here, right now, we have to deal with the assaults as they come while we're building the Canada that we want, by the people, for the people, of the people, all of that stuff aside. On that note, I'll have an update, a bit of an announcement at the end of the show here tonight. But yeah, so yesterday was a deep dive into Bill C-293, which is in the Senate, and Canadians need to understand how diabolical and evil this bill is, and that's just one. And so that's a big one. And so I've got a real short 1-minute clip here that I think it's prudent to kind of set the tone, the ambiance of why so much of what is coming throughout this is so diabolical and what it adds up to. And as much as it sucks sometimes, guys, that I don't have good news, there's always good news, because the fight ain't over yet. And they're running out of stuff, but this is some of the stuff that helps us deal with it day to day. So I'm going to play this one for everybody.
All it took was Donald Trump getting elected for arguably 200 years of a First Amendment principle to be entirely discarded because it was leading to the wrong kinds of people being elected. Free speech on the internet was blamed for the loss of the Philippines election by the State Department in 2016. It was blamed for the events of Brexit. It was blamed for the rise of Trump in 2016. It was blamed for the rise of Bolsonaro. It was blamed for the rise of Modi in India. In country after country, the free and open internet, unfiltered alternative news, the rise of citizen journalists, the rise of citizens in those countries who have larger voices than CIA-backed media has meant that the State Department has lost control of those countries.
Bingo.
And what happened was, after 2016, the technology and the networks were established to be able to add a new toolkit to American diplomacy, which is diplomacy by censorship. So you have truckers in America whose income tax is going to pay foreign governments to censor their citizens.
We're becoming the Soviet Union.
All it took was Donald Trump getting elected.
100%. That little clips, there's a couple of really big gold nuggets in there. The CIA-backed controls of foreign governments has become nearly impossible. And what that is, we have to ask yourself, well, who asked who controls the CIA in controlling other foreign governments that are now becoming out of control, and us being one of those, as a matter of fact, is the oligarchs, the people that think themselves as a small elite society, are the only ones with the actual rights to rule the world, and we are the useless useless eaters and carbon they seek to reduce. And this is really sums up the uh, the level of intervention that they are desperately trying to invoke with their censorship measures and acts. We're going to talk about that here in a couple of minutes. Um, but now too, now that we've got a little bit of the blood going there, guys. Um, Thank you guys. If you haven't shared this yet, please do. This is a community, not an audience. We're all in this together because we're all going to end up in the same hell if we aren't in this together, right? So the next story up tonight, I'm not going to dig into this one. I'm just going to kind of tell you what's going on in the name of time, because I've got a bunch to get through here. But it's not really that Justin Trudeau. The headline is a little bit deceiving, but there's some good stuff towards the end of it. What this boils down to is the Trudeau is really truly pissed off a bunch of his handlers. He's literally a demolition squad when it comes to let's see if I can maybe just pull the last. Where is it here? This one. I will play you just a couple of minutes of this clip here, because it's important, and then I'll stack a little bit more fuel on that fire.
Countries that were not adequately contributing based on NATO's straightforward benchmarks.
We're supposed to
And as you mentioned,
Canada's supposed to, all of the members of NATO are supposed to contribute 2% of their gross domestic profits into maintaining NATO. Canada has not been living up to that for a very long time. Trump said, why is America paying for all of the expense of NATO? And Trudeau announced here not that long ago that, there was going to be no real tangible significant increase in funding for NATO while he's out there, being, this Photoshop chihuahua pissing on the Russian bear dog's leg every single day, like an absolute idiot. But just to listen to the tone here is important.
NATO is in town this week. Hudson has the privilege of being one of the think tanks helping to host them. How do you view the role of the alliance today? Some have said it's outdated. What would you say to that?
I want to add here, we're going to touch on something at the kind of at the tail end of the show, and that he's actually deflecting from. The essence of the question that's being posed to him is, has NATO outlived its use because it's getting its ass handed to them in this conflict over there? But watch his deflection and his answer, because this assigns a lot of blame.
It served its purpose, right? We have it has largely been helpful in deterring war and conflict and maintaining peace. Historically, it's been a very important organization, and it has tremendous potential. But at the same time, we have to note that what is certainly outdated is the participation rate of everyone who's involved. I mean, if you make a commitment, you're going to spend 2% of your GDP, you need to do that. As I noted in my remarks earlier, arguably, there may need more needed now. We're almost at the level of the Cold War, World War II at this point. And so there might need to be a greater contribution. But I think it's a very important thing to maintain. I mean, we support it, we celebrate its accomplishments, but there needs to be a renewed sense of commitment, I would say, on the part of the member nations. And there's others who aspire to be a part of it, but we've got to make sure that there's an entrance fee to this. Everyone cannot ride along on the coattails of America. And Donald Trump says this as bluntly as anyone. It's just right and fair for us to demand that others do their part. And I think that message is being received. We're encouraged to see more nations, bringing that to the table, but we've got a lot more work to do in that respect, and we'll be trying to encourage that.
Sir, I have noticed too in your press releases and your remarks, you're always you were often very careful to mention the countries who are doing their part, and I've noticed those are the ones that are on the front end of where the danger is. So you want to talk a little bit about just the Baltic countries and what you've observed from meeting with them and seeing their troubles?
Yeah, when the grenades are close to your own backyard, it gives you a renewed sense of priority and commitment. By contrast, shamefully, Canada announced in the last few days or last couple of days that they won't be ponying up. They're not going to do their 2%. Why? Talk about riding on America's coattails. They have the safety and security of being on our border and not having to worry about that. I think that's shameful. I think if you're going to be a member nation and participant, you need to do your part. Some have a greater sense of urgency about that, clearly, because the threat is at their own back door. But here's the reality: if we don't stop it there, it will come here. There's no.
Okay, now that's where I'm gonna stop this one here, and I'm gonna transition into why this is important on this. He just goes into campaigning for more show support there. So the significant part of this is they're calling Trudeau out. They're pissed at Canada, and rightfully so. Not saying that I endorse NATO, I do not. But what this is a sign of diplomatic tension. So Justin Trudeau, the demolisher, is systematically destroying every relationship with the United States. Not exactly the most brilliant move when, as he rightfully said, Canada is riding on the sense of security and safety that America is going to watch our, cover our butts just because they're there. And that kind of hubris and arrogance is incredibly dangerous, not to mention stupid and wacko. So now that is one relationship that this baby Castro, little potato, has demolished. But to get to the other part of that story, where it talks a little bit about Mexico, and this is where the headline is a little deceiving. It's not that Trudeau has been permanently banned from Mexico, but the president of Mexico has suspended diplomatic relations with Canada and Mexico because they want to reform their own constitution and implement elected judges into the judiciary, meaning they want to fix the crime and corruption in Mexico, and Lord Farquaad decided to stick his nose into it and has pissed off Mexico. So that could down the road really dramatically influence people's abilities to travel back and forth to Mexico. So if he continues doing this kind of stuff with diplomatic ties, pause, you get into trouble in Mexico. Yeah, you might be on your own there in those kinds of regards. So this demolishing crew in Ottawa is achieving what they set out to do is the only way that I can describe it. And this is what we're kind of starting this off with. We'll get into a little bit more Canadian problem here, cause and effect. This is all triage when we're addressing this kind of stuff. None of it's about solutions. It's all about the insanity and the crime. Every day this is what we have to look forward to from this government is more crime, more corruption, more embarrassment, more insanity, more control, all of those hashtag WEF Fourth Reich insanities, the manufactured destabilization. And this is kind of what we're going to touch on here next. I'm going to play a good portion of this one here, guys. Because this one's this one's going to warm your blood a little bit before we get into why the hashtag Stop Our Senate And I hope you guys are all paying attention for that one. So 5 minutes or so of this one, kick back and have a sip of your, have something in your hand that don't want to throw because you just might.
Seems like they're kind of luring people to Canada. Like, hey, hey, mom, if I go to Canada, I can get $15,000 credit and $2,000 just for signing up for a bank account.
Wow.
Like, that makes it sound maybe like something that Canada actually isn't.
I'm just with Old Stock Ash over here and in BC, and I'm looking around because she's showed me this crazy thing. It's basically a newcomer special banking from the major big banks. See,
Well, they can apply for credit cards with no credit history at all. All the banks are doing it.
all right, so let's start with TD. We got it over here. Banking benefits up to $1,985 in value for newcomers in Canada. Banking benefits up to just about $2,000 in value for newcomers to Canada, right? So they're calling them newcomers. They're doing this entire thing. As we know, this is TD Bank. Contact us for your new to Canada banking package to help you get started. Book an appointment. We speak your language, English, Francais, China 1, China 2, other languages, Espanol, a ton of other Asian languages all the way down to Ruski. Right, so you can just see that they know who's coming in here, and that's why they're targeting these people. You see all the languages right here. What do you get? You get a TD unlimited checking account where you pay no monthly account fee for 1 year, up to $203 of value, $200. Plus, you could get $400 of cash. You get unlimited transactions. And I don't know about you, but I mean, they charge me every time I tap, you know?
I pay like $30 a month.
That's what I'm saying here, right? We could really use that. What about the Canadians here? What about Old Stock Ash?
Really?
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're Old Stock, but they're not giving you.
I gotta pay.
You got to pay. Okay. No TD ATM fee at any ATM in Canada. Free Interact e-transfer transactions and a $16.95, $17 monthly fee rebate for a year. All right, what else can you get if you're a newcomer in Canada, right? You're an immigrant, you're freshy, you just come right off the boat, and hey, you know what? You haven't earned your keep. You haven't paid $1 in the system. The banking system supported arm in arm, hand in hand with the Canadian government, as we know, just like across the global West. That's what we're seeing.
Start building your credit with us by applying for a TD credit card. You could get approved for up to a $15,000 credit limit. That's pretty large, with no credit history required.
I need a tanning booth.
Right away, you get
a good one.
$15K credit card limit. You get no credit history required. What does that mean? That means that people can come here, they could just scam as much as they want. And who's going to eventually, who's going to be paying the piper? That's going to be us. Old Stock Ash, your family has been here for hundreds of years, huh?
Yeah. $15,000 credit limit, that's a lot. I don't even think I have a $15,000 credit limit.
That's a lot of money. $15,000 credit limit right there. So there's a luring thing as well from the banks because everyone's got internet, right? So people are checking it out and they're hearing about it and they're passing it back and forth. So that there's a luring as well, even from the banks. Yeah. Wow, incredible.
Couldn't they just come over, get their credit card and go back?
And you know what? They do that. Mm-hmm. That's a big case of people who run up their credit cards from these external countries and then they just leave.
And that must affect Canada's debt.
Fly in, fly out ATM.
Banks are going to, at the very least, they're going to pass on all of those costs to us. That's for sure. The big five. There's no doubt about it. Anyhow,
So this is like the perfect scam. You get somebody to fly in, get a bunch of money, go back to someplace, buy up a bunch of gold or silver or art or whatever they want, come back, sell it. I mean, the grift in this that we're paying for through the theft of our government is astronomical. And if anybody doesn't think for a second that some of these people are not taking that kind of advantage of these kinds of opportunities presented by Lord Farquaad, we're sadly mistaken. Let me put this into perspective. I was listening to a report from a U.S. hearing today where it mentioned that it was more likely that there was 16 million undocumented foreigners, shall we say. What are the odds that if what's the math? Somebody do the math on that for me real quick. That's really too big math for me. But what are the odds that they're all really good, kind, loving, Christian, God-loving, God-fearing people, or that perhaps 1 or 2% of them might be diabolically evil? What's 2% of 16 million? And tell me we don't have a problem that we're bankrolling because our captured, infiltrated management teams have turned demolitions and genocide squads. How's that for colorful language?
Let us know what you think in the comments, and you probably got your own ideas, and there's stuff we're missing here, so I'd love to hear it, and I'm sure Old Stock Ash would love to hear it too. Thanks so much.
All right, what do we got on deck next? Oh yeah, now we're going to get into how this is worse. So that's it's Lisa. Thanks. Lisa did the math. That's about 320,000 people that could potentially, if that's only like 2% of the people had bad intentions. That's a whole lot of suffering, because that 320,000 people will leave a trail of victims behind them of epic, monumental proportions. And we all know how much our government respects people that they've damaged or hurt, right? So this is an excellent post from Dan Knight. Dan's been on our show here a few months back. He does really great, thought-provoking posts, and he's kind of a steady Eddie in the new independent authentic media. I like Dan's work. We don't agree on 100% of everything, but he does the very thorough, complete work. Love his work. So let's see here. What's Dan got to say? Good morning, my fellow Canadians. This is going to start to pile some of the wood on the fire that we started last night. So good morning, my fellow Canadians. We've got a major story that goes right to the heart of the political swamp in Ottawa. Justin Trudeau has just appointed 2 new senators from Alberta, and as usual, he's trying to sell them to us as independent. Now, first, let's talk about who these new senators are. Dr. Christopher Wells is one of them. Wells is a well-known activist in the alphabet soup community, a vocal advocate for every liberal cause under the sun. He's been busy pushing for policies that promote radical gender ideology in schools, criticizing Alberta's conservative stance at every turn. Now, Trudeau wants us to believe that Wells, who has made a career out of progressive activism, will somehow be an independent voice in the Senate. Give me a break. Now, let's be absolutely clear here, folks. Daryl Friedhandler is no impartial figure. He's a corporate lawyer who spent years involved in organizations pushing left-wing agendas under the guise of community service. And what does that really mean? He's a leftist activist, plain and simple. 100% agree. So now Trudeau wants us to believe that Friedhandler's Senate appointment is independent. Give me a break. This guy has funneled nearly $80,000 into the Liberal Party. $79,968.77 to be exact. The Senate shouldn't be for sale to the highest bidder or most loyal crony. This is a classic Trudeau move, stacking the Senate with his cronies and turning it into a rubber stamp for his radical agenda. It's not just political maneuvering, it's an outright attack on our democratic institutions. Now, this goes even beyond the de facto de jure government that we're talking about. This is straight up crime syndicate, cronyism. Guys, 100% conflict. There is no impartiality. This person is neither of these people or any of them that he is putting into Senate have any allegiance to us, we the people, right? So Premier Smith has been very upset about this, rightfully so. There is this is something that Trudeau's been doing to all of the provinces, but this is a really great article that goes into more of the insanity of it. So let's break it down a little further. I'll start here. The whole process is designed to look like it's fair and transparent, but in reality, it's just another way for Trudeau to exert control. The so-called independent senators are anything but. They might not wear Liberal Party badges, but make no mistake, they're marching to the beat of Trudeau's drum. This isn't about finding the best people to serve Canadians. It's about finding the best people to serve Justin Trudeau and his agenda. And we're going to touch on some of this here following up, that's going to prove that he's 100% correct in this. Now, this just isn't my opinion. Look at the facts. Since 2016, Trudeau has made 86 appointments to the Senate, all under this independent system. And surprise, surprise, the Senate has drifted further and further left, rubber stamping Trudeau policies with little resistance. The whole thing is a farce, and Trudeau's latest picks just prove it. Now, he goes on to talk about Bill C-18. This is something that Trudeau got slammed for today in some other articles, some other beefs that are coming up in the relationship between Canada and the U.S. Bill C-18, this so-called Online News Act, is Trudeau's failed attempt at news censorship. Why has it failed? I'll tell you about that in a second. The bill mandates that tech giants like Google and Meta, formerly Facebook, pay Canadian news publishers for content shared on their platforms. It sounds nice on paper, but what's the result? Meta decided to ban all news content in Canada. That's right. Canadian independent media lost its voice because they no longer are being shared on the platforms when people actually get their news. And that's 100% accurate statements in there. So really great article. And what I was going to add on to that is expect trade issues developing and probably not making it on the mainstream news, but that 3% adds up to billions of dollars. And the American government is taking that as an assault against their tech industry. So now Trudeau is once again showing that his brilliant schemes do nothing but piss off everybody within the system. So this senator issue, guys, this actually kept me up last night after we were done looking at Bill C-293 and knowing that these senators are doing what they're doing, what they're going over. This is Bill C-293, and when we covered this last night, guys, this is Green Jesus, Jill Bowes' wet dream of fantasy policy that completely gives them absolute arbitrary ability to decide, oh no, you've got this weird blade of grass in your backyard and it's the only one in the territory, so you're going to have to move out. We're going to seize your property, and if you want to say anything about it, well then right behind that bill is going to be Bill C-63 that is going to lock you up, silence you, take away your access to greater communications. And if you think about saying, well, you can be under house arrest, and if somebody anonymously, like these Antifa guys, report me 300 times because they didn't like something I said, if they decide that they want to anonymously report me because I think I might, they think I might say something, and the government can prosecute me up to, I think, what is it, $50,000 per allegation, and lock me up in my house. And make no mistake, guys, that will apply to all of us. They're just going to come and get me first. So this bill, both of these bills, are in the Senate right now. And now this is where this is an absolute removal of any representation. These people in the Senate gets to say yay or nay on stuff that is passed in the House. So here's my question to anybody out there. Who actually holds the power? The Senate or whoever's in control in Parliament. Because if Pierre Poilievre actually wins, like everybody expects him to, and this is the part that it's worse than we think. Everybody is expecting Pierre to make change. He's going to axe those taxes. He's going to, fix Trudeau's problems. How? How is Pierre ever going to be able to fix anything Trudeau has done when Trudeau's sycophants and clone troopers, cookie cutter WEF globalist sold out clone troopers, control the Senate? So these bills have already passed Pierre and the Conservative Party. They've already passed it before it gets to the Senate. So this is why you're not going to hear anything about anything that's in this bill, because they've already, passed it. This is why they're not going to hear anything about Bill C-63 out of Pierre's mouth, because they've already passed it. And if you think that Max can undo the Senate, tell me, how is Max going to undo the Senate? Ladies and gentlemen, we have a far bigger problem than tribal politics right now. We have an absolute captured Senate, and that's just going to get worse. So this is, like I said at the beginning, though, this isn't over. The game is not over yet, right? But we've seen what happens. There's some people that, make a lot of noise in the Senate. Mr. Cooper and Larry Brock and a few others. But at the end of the day, what influence do they have? What power do they have? Right? Literally, the election, and this is my point, Bill, is the next election really doesn't mean anything if we don't do something about the Senate. It's the Senate that, they can squabble all they want between Trudeau and Pierre. They can flip sides, and Pierre's, can be leading Parliament. They can win a majority in Parliament. They can put whatever they want to, they could ram a bill through into the Senate, and Singh will be collecting his pension, giggling, knowing that they're not going to undo a single thing that Klaus put them in there to do. And these two bills are the cornerstone of the Great Reset. Because if we aren't silenced on through these desperate measures, because no honest conservative can really claim that they uphold any of our values or our wishes if they signed on for this to get to the Senate. And now if it passes the Senate, all of these things that they're arbitrarily going to go full Gestapo on isn't going to make any difference. Yeah, Stefan, this is part of the good news. It does have to reach pass three readings in the Senate. Bill 293 is completed its first, and the second is on deck. It passed the third reading in the House of Commons, passed the first reading in the Senate. Bill C-63 is not quite as far, but they'll be having it in the current session. Second reading is in the House of Commons, but at this current point, this is why Jagmeet and Justin are, meat muppets running around, distraction, division, creating other avenues. Cannot let a good crisis go to waste. But this is the power. This is the power that these guys are. Pierre is not going to be able to be undone. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to be the ones to lean on the Senate. This is a quick little video that I wanted to play last night. This ties into more of what we're doing here. Sorry, comment here. So I'm not really denigrating meat, but that's the only way that I can describe them without getting myself in jail or in the gulag any quicker than I already will. A quick little minute to kind of bridge the understanding that this isn't just happening in Canada. This is lawyer Lisa. She was on last night, gave us the breakdown on Bill 293, and she has a message about what's going on, because she's seeing the same thing as the rest of us that spend our lives swimming through the swamp. So catch this minute on New Zealand.
Hey, you gotta know what your pandemic plans are in your country. Did you hear about New Zealand's pandemic plan? Remember how they do everything the same, like across the board? Well, New Zealand's getting ready to be vaccinated by pods. That's right. Section 71A of their pandemic plan states that a member of the police can do anything reasonably necessary, including using force, to help a medical officer help or any person authorized in the exercise or performance of powers or functions under Section 70 or 71. Watch the next.
So this is where New Zealand is at. We're not going to be that far behind. Sorry if the audio isn't that great, guys. It's probably tough going through a bunch of devices and depending on what you're watching on, but it will be in the Substack tomorrow, like everything is the next day. So this is part, once they remove our abilities to object and silence those of us that are on here from Carly, I can address this one. It's to break the algorithms. That's why people are putting overlay music on what they're saying for these short videos. Basically, what she's saying is that New Zealand is a little bit ahead of us, and police have the authority to force you, or are going to have the authority, self-anointed authority, to jab you if you're not up to date on your jabs in New Zealand. So that's on deck in the land down under. So next up, guys, so this is kind of what started this week off on Sunday with having a little discussion with James. He submitted, humbly, he sent this article over to me that he was working on Sunday. Him and I were chatting. This is where he kind of gave me the heads up on why this was important, why talking to Lisa was going to be important, and boy, did he absolutely nail it. So he goes into more on this bill. If you don't know James Roguski, you've been living under a rock. This will also be in the Substack tomorrow as well, but he is the preeminent watchdog, pitbull tracking hound of the scam of the global. Mostly he focuses on the WHO stuff, right? And so this implementation, this is what he's seeing in this Pandemic Prevention and Preparedness Act, which they've wrapped up in pretty words like Bill C-293, so that none of us can read legalese worth of crap, to be fair. So we have to depend on others to bring us to attention, and this is where I'm so grateful for Lisa and helping us digest that last night. And James goes into more of the crime spree that this bill is going to allow them to cover up. He digs into some of the stuff and what we didn't get into it last night. He breaks it down on September. The Senate comes together and they are going to be talking about this bill. This is one of the cornerstones that Trudeau needs to get implemented. This is the reason why he's staying in. It's not for Jagmeet's pension. It's to get these bills passed through. Uncle Klaus is depending on him to implement the foundation for the first post-nation state, right? So what James took and pulled out of here was, I think, incredibly interesting and should again raise the temperature of the blood, knowing what was removed, so that the conservative pseudo conservatives, the defenders of democracy, what made it okay for them to sign these documents. And what was removed was a bunch of stuff about the crimes of the beer bug bioweapons program. It's like that's just going down the memory hole, completely eradicated from the process of what should be in this pandemics and preparedness treaty. They've scrapped all of that and replaced it with all of the climate 15-minute city stuff to declare that the climate emergency. And there's a video here from David Redmond. I was going to play the whole thing, but we'll run quite long if we do that. I'm going to play a few minutes of this, though, because it's incredibly damning and incredibly incriminating. And then after we get through that, so in James's article, he goes on to break this all down, what they removed, what they took out. It's just insane. They made it so broad spectrum, but down at the end, he provides, this is what I wanted to give everybody, the heads up to get your hands on a take action plan. We started here with the hashtag stop our Senate. I'll post that for everybody. And this is where we get to turn into a media mob. And by that, I don't mean angry mob, but a loud. The court of public opinion has to get plugged in and take action on this diabolical, evil policy that is wrapped up in gobbledygook. And nobody is going to do this for us, guys. And they're only going to be listening right now. Once they're in office, it's too late. Once it's passed, it's too late. They're only going to be dialed in and listening to us if we get millions of Canadians to get on board and stop our Senate from passing this. This is going to help you all get plugged into different ways to do that. And we need to do that. Physical mail, I cannot strongly enough encourage physical mail. First of all, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything other than the paper to do it. And here's the reason why. If they get mass emails, it's real easy for a secretary to dismiss that. It never makes it to get noticed. But when they have 15 bags of mail come in on Monday morning, and then 15 more bags on Tuesday, and 15 more bags on Wednesday, they are sitting there swimming in their own sweat and tears, crying, people. So physical mail still matters. These are cowards, and they need to know in no unclear terms, this is unacceptable. We've got all kinds of ways to to articulate that. Do not make threats. That is not what this is about. This is raising hard awareness, loud, and doing it immediately. This is I'm not telling you what you have to do. I'm just telling you what will work. And then we don't have a huge amount of time to do this. That's the pressure sensitive side of this, guys. And once it's in, then we're really screwed. So there's all kinds of resources here on James's Substack. Here's some great points articulated for everybody. A little tip and pointer is very clearly make it known that you request a response from your elected official, and one that makes sense. and this becomes evidentiary again as well, as as Lisa showed us last night. Her journey into exposing this started in 2021, and having the documentation of these people trying to dismiss her only makes the criminality shine that much stronger, right? So a couple of great points here I want to pull up here. Absolutely, Mara. A written letter represents 1,000 constituents. So this is huge. So don't think that one doesn't matter. Thank you, Carly. Thank you for that. 100%. You know when you get into the office and you got mountains of mail bags and they request a response, that is every official's worst nightmare, literally, really. And James and Lisa, and even in French. Ha ha ha, right? So this is great. He's also provided all of the senators' email addresses as well. They will all have mailing addresses. You'll be able to get that off of the parliamentary.gc.ca. Mail your own, but yeah, that's all of them. The two new ones aren't in there yet, but yeah, everything we need to make a really big stink. And now's the time. And this is literally what we need to do to bring the court of public opinion into the game. Right? The game is rigged. 100% it's rigged. But as we started the show off with the CIA control is failing, the people are winning, we need to continue. We need to get louder than ever before, right? In what we're doing. And so I'm going to play a few minutes of Dr. David Redmond here, just because this is one of those things you guys can arm yourself with in moving forward on what we're doing, because this is an important, a really critical testimony to exposing the the level of deprivation and crime that they're trying to ram through in this bill. This is the guy that they should have been listening to.
My name's Dave Redmond, and I'm retired. I retired fully in 2013. But prior to that, I did 27 years in the military as an officer in the Canadian Armed Forces, Army specifically, and then did another 5 years with Emergency Management Alberta. And then for about 7 years after that, I did consulting with federal government, provincial government, the US government on emergency management.
So what exactly is emergency management for someone who has no idea?
Emergency management is a disciplined process that constantly looks at all the hazards that could potentially affect the jurisdiction you're in. So it's based on an all hazards approach. You're constantly monitoring the hazards. You have full mitigation plans for those hazards, but then mitigation isn't always perfect. So the second function of emergency management is preparedness. So you write plans, you organize agencies, you build capability so that you can respond if your mitigation fails. The third function is response. So when something bad does happen, you've got the pre-planned plans, you adjust them for the exact hazard that's coming at you, and you respond in a pre-planned and systematic manner to address the emergency. And then the fourth function is recovery, because you always know that at the end of it, there's going to be damage done, and you have to recover, whether it's your economy, whether it's a personal challenges, all of the different things that can happen in an emergency. You then rebuild afterwards, and that's called recovery. So it's mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery, but it's a discipline made up of 5 dimensions, and the intent is always to be ready, but ready to respond. I retired from the forces in 1999, right before September 11th, 2001, and I was hired by Emergency Management Alberta. My first job with Emergency Management Alberta, I was to run what's called community programs, which is helping the 314 municipalities in Alberta to prepare for an emergency. So make sure they had mitigation preparedness, response, and recovery in place in their communities. On September the 11th, we all know what happened that horrible, tragic day. And on September 12th, Premier Klein formed what was called the Task Force on Security, made up of the 10 deputy ministers of the government of Alberta, but what I called the 26 brightest minds in our province. They were brought together by the Premier. And he asked one question: what changed today? And my role completely changed. I stopped being the director of community programs. I was brought in originally as a plan writing expert, but within days, I was assigned the task of writing the Alberta Crisis Management Counterterrorism Plan. And first to write it, which was done by November, and then to implement it over all of Alberta, the private sector, which is a huge part of that plan, and the public sector. And we did that over the next 2 years.
I want to just pause here for a second because a couple of comments here, Stefan. You'll understand this, that Colonel Redmond is 100% on point. And for me, this hearing from him really resonates with me because I spent 15 years in emergency crisis management, toxic, spill management, crisis management, all kinds of it. And this man was buried. When this first started, this man got buried. Not only did, I see here, somebody said Jason Kenney ignored his plan 100%. He proved early on that everything that they did was absolutely the last thing that they should do. And I'm grateful to hear his testimony getting out now.
At the end of that, I was placed in charge of all of Emergency Management Alberta. So I took over the entire department and then responded with the government to all of the hazards that happened from 2004 till I retired in the fall of 2005. And so worked things like the major floods and the huge forest fires that happened in those years, working directly to support confidence in government with our Premier, but while doing the mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery for each of those major emergencies.
So with your experience, then, do you feel like current emergency that you've got, say, the credibility to employ?
I would hope that people with my type of experience, both the military, but in particular the working with the provincial order of government in emergency management, would have been the type of resources and assets that the government would have looked to if they had needed them. So in March, when I saw our province pivot to a lockdown, a non-pharmaceutical interventions philosophy, which time and time again has been proven to be ineffective and not the
Mark here, why wasn't he screaming about this? He was screaming about this when he was let go. But like most of the rest of us, he paid the price for that. But he's stuck to his testimony.
The way to do it, so much so that there are complete lessons learned and complete planning documents that say, don't do this. I was dumbfounded. I couldn't believe it. And so for about 15 days, 16 days, I watched the news and I was horrified, absolutely horrified. I then picked up my pen because I couldn't help myself anymore because I want to be retired. I do not want to work. But I wrote to the Premier and explained to him exactly what I was seeing and what should be done as opposed to what was being done. And I wrote him a comprehensive letter and explained how the mechanisms work, that the emergency management organization should have been placed in charge. Health should have been looking for surge capacity and helping to build the quarantine plan for our seniors. And that clearly wasn't happening. What I couldn't believe was that we closed our schools, which is a non-pharmaceutical intervention strongly deterred against in all of the previous plans. That we were locking down our business, strongly discouraged in all previous plans. That we were telling people to isolate in their homes. Every one of those types of activities, all of the non-pharmaceuticals, we were sending home healthy people. People, if someone would walk into an organization and someone in their family had tested positive and it became known, we would send all the healthy people in that organization home. Self-isolation of people who've been exposed but not actually sick, totally against all non-pharmaceutical intervention. We did everything that we were told from previous hard lessons learned not to do, we did them. So the damage to the education of our children, the damage to our small business, the damage to people's mental health the damage to societal health all started. But we could have stopped it. We could have stopped it in April if we turned the corner and said, no, we're going to follow a confidence-based approach instead of a fear-based approach.
They knew. They did it anyway. And they buried people like Colonel Redmond.
Because what happened right at the start, in my opinion, is the medical officers of health in all 13 provinces and territories in Canada were placed in charge. And they pivoted to a mission statement that is, we will protect our medical healthcare system. When the mission,
the one care system,
should have been, we will cause minimum damage to our province through COVID-19. Two completely different mission statements. But when you place the medical officer in health in charge, that's what they know. Protect the medical system. Protecting the medical system has destroyed the mental health, the societal health, the education of our children, the effects on other serious diseases like diabetes, cancer, and heart disease. Those three people have been abandoned, so much so you're now seeing ads on TV all across Alberta from the Heart Association and from the Cancer Association begging people to go to the emergency if they have symptoms, because instead of going to the emergency, they're dying at home because they're terrified of catching COVID. So we've created long-term illness, societal impacts, mental health, the education of our children, and let's talk about doubling the national debt of our country. If we don't think that doubling the national debt of Canada isn't going to have 2 decades worth of impact, then we're living in a dream.
At least.
Because when you double your national debt, there's simply less money to transfer provinces for healthcare, for example, for the next 2 decades. We have approached this in a manner using non-pharmaceutical interventions that was completely dismissed and strongly urged against by every organization in our international, our national, and our provincial plans. Said, don't do this. But by placing the medical officers of health, they went to what they knew. They've now, it's called mission creep. They've now gone even away from protecting the healthcare system. It's very clear from what you see on the news every night in all of our provinces in Canada, they now believe that the aim is to make sure no one catches COVID.
Yeah. Big difference.
It's impossible.
When you look back, what did you talk about plans that were, what were those plans?
That's the mission creep of Bill C-293. They want to protect us all from ever catching anything that might happen if somebody looks at us sideways or associates with us in public. How dare you, you toxic human?
Did they have access to those plans? Why do you think they went that way?
Nationally, there is a pandemic response plan for the federal government. And in every province in Canada, there is a response plan. I'll give you the example of Alberta. It's dated 2014. You update your emergency plans once every 10 years. So it was due for review and rewriting. I knew about it simply because I was the lead of the emergency management team that wrote the 2004-2005 version, which was then updated in 2014. It's still on the Government of Alberta's website. You can download it. And it has 4 goals. The first one is to stop the spread of the disease and to minimize death. That's goal number 1. Goal number 2 is to stop the societal disruption caused by the disease, and in particular, to assure critical infrastructure. We have a power grid, we have natural gas to heat our homes, we have water supply, making sure those things are sustainable. So that's goal 2. Goal number 3 is to ensure the minimum economic impact on your province, Alberta. And the last one, to ensure an effective and efficient distribution of resources during the pandemic and the recovery. 4 goals, we failed at all 4. So we failed at the first one, and we completely ignored the other 3. You can't tell me that we believe that we've done the minimum economic damage to our province by what we've done. And that's what happens when you use non-pharmaceutical interventions. It's going to cause all those other disruptions, and that's why they're so strongly recommended against. Because to overcome mental health, societal health, education of our youth, collateral damage to other severe diseases, and your economy, you don't use them. But we've got those 5
We had Michelle Smith on here in early 2021 already, outlining all of those things that we were already seeing happening, and identifying and going to the government for. She has beat her head against the wall, trying to bring awareness to all of this. And he's 100% on point, 100% on point. We called it, the tsunami of trauma that we identified early on. So yeah, insane.
In spades now. Think about the people who have committed suicide are extra drug overdoses caused by a campaign of fear. That comes out of lockdowns. If you had followed a campaign of confidence saying,
a campaign of fear is psychological abuse. That's what they gave Omar Khadr $10.3 million for doing to him. And they've done it to millions and millions of Canadians. That is, that is worse. That is, yes, that's that kind of psychological abuse is literally, on the level of evil of MK Ultra, and they did it.
We've built surge capacity in our hospitals, folks. We're ready for this disease. We've quarantined our long-term care homes, and look, we've got the lowest per capita rate in the world. We have assured that our economy has stayed open to the largest extent possible. We've only imposed very, very minor limitations on our industry, and our economy is continuing to do well. There's never any context given. When a medical officer of health talks, in Ontario, for example, at the peak, they said, we've got 1,700 acute care beds filled with COVID patients. Our hospital system is being overwhelmed. What they never bothered to say is there's 22,358.
They can scrub it, Carly, but I'll make sure there's a million more copies out there. No, it's available. It's the 2010 Rockefeller report.
Acute care beds in Ontario. 1,700 out of 22,300. So it wasn't COVID that was overwhelming the hospitals. Something was, but it wasn't being talked about. They were using COVID to try and justify the fact that they hadn't built surge capacity to handle perhaps an extra large number of patients. But it's certainly COVID wasn't overwhelming it when you've only got 1,700 cases out of 22,000. We were never given denominators. We're not getting anything in context. It's intentionally not given in context for the simple reason that that would destroy the campaign of fear. Because that serves the agenda of preserving the hospital system. A 16-year-old sent me a drawing, and in the middle is the medical officer of health standing in front of a hospital with light beams coming out of it saying, protect our healthcare system. Surrounding it, behind it, is a massive body bags of all the seniors from long-term care homes with a little sign says long-term care home deaths. Over here, mental health care deaths, societal deaths, the entire concept of economic devastation with the
and a bunch of nurses doing TikTok videos in the empty hallways and rooms.
Buildings on fire of all of our small business and all of the other things. And our interrelationship between provinces with big roadblocks across barriers between provinces. Capsulated in one cartoon by a 16-year-old, the complete concept of what we've done wrong and its impact.
Okay, where are we today? Where are we today, and what do you think needs to get done?
Now we have to pay for and somehow recover from the massive mental health that we've done. We need a plan for mental health to get out of this. We need a plan for societal health to get out of this. We need to find a way to undo the damage we've done to the education of our children and their social development. We need to make sure that we're ready to handle the extra cancer patients, people that are suffering from heart disease, people that are suffering from diabetes, people that are suffering from dementia that aren't in our long-term care homes. Build a plan for each of those areas, and we need to figure out how the heck we're going to recover our economy.
And that they know is coming. They know they need to do it. They won't. They refuse to by design. This is why we have medical assistance in death. That will balance the budget. That is what they want. They actually are encouraging and training and expanding and advertising and promoting death doula business because they know that they've destroyed the system. It's owned by pharmaceutical companies, and that's what they went to that's the side of history that they chose. And the alternative, the way out is we'll stick the last needle in you for you here in Canada. And this is why already maids is the third leading cause of premature death in Canada. Why? And that's good. That's going to skyrocket to number one.
So my thing is two pillars, but it's all based on removing the campaign of fear first. You've got to remove the campaign of fear and turn to one of confidence. And I've written specifically how to rebuild confidence to every one of the premiers. I sent them a briefing note as recently again as February, but I told them the same thing last April. And rebuild the response based on confidence. Confidence that our healthcare system isn't going to collapse. It never.
Where does the jab fit into all this, Linda? The jab is the reason for all of the escalating people, the mass skyrocketing of turbo cancers and all of those other ailments and problems and issues that have quantified exponentially. That's what the jab was meant to do, and that's the mess. The evidence that made is designed to clean up for people. So that's the purpose of the jab, part of a decarbonization process.
Never has, and it's not going to, because we're going to build surge capacity, both in infrastructure and personnel. We've had a year to do this, and yet somehow the only way we thought we could build surge capacity was stopping other treatments and other surgeries. Absolutely preposterous. You never do that. You build new surge capacity based on new capability. You don't destroy the lives of others for COVID. We've chosen winners and losers. We've decided that only COVID patients matter. No one else does. That's why we've got the mental health problems, the societal problems, the economic problems, the education of our children problems, and the increase in deaths in the other diseases. Somehow we completely threw away all the lessons learned that were learned the hard way, and now we have to relearn them again the hard way. One of the things that we should have done in March, we have a pre-written plan, right? Reason we do that is so you can immediately and quickly, you take that plan, you adjust it for the actual disease, because the pandemic plan was written for any old pandemic. You focused it in on COVID. We knew who the target was for this disease. Could have been different for a different disease, but for this disease, it was people over 60 with multiple severe comorbidities. So we take the plan and we tailor it, and in the plan, we put in the isolation of long-term care homes. We put in the plan for dealing with people not in long-term care homes, all the rest of that. And you actually publish it through the media to every member of your jurisdiction. Let's use Alberta. The Premier of Alberta writes a written plan that not later than the 15th of March, we saw this coming in February, we take the pandemic plan, we bring the emergency management team together, we bring all the 10 major departments that are going to be involved. One of them is health, but there's a whole bunch of others. You write a plan. You issue it through the press to the public. Then the public knows exactly what the plan is by phase. What are the triggers to move between phases? They know exactly why they should have confidence in government and what the government's going to do for each type of thing that could happen. And there's a page in there that says, and this is how you give us feedback. You got a better idea? Tell us. Instead, everything's been a surprise. There's been no published written plan. Nobody has a clue what the government of Alberta is going to do from one day to the next. And it's pretty clear they don't either, because the medical officer of health is making it up day by day as things happen. I take you back to the meat packing plant, the abattoirs that had the outbreak. It came as a complete shock. Let me describe the livestock industry. It's no brainer. Whole bunch of cow-calf operations.
Gee, we just talked about that last night, didn't we? That's kind of all wrapped up under that, broad brush, cover everything Bill C-293 as well. I wanted to just chime on this comment from Nana Sue. King Chucky is he's not at the top of all of this, believe it or not. He's the face at the top of all of this, but he is too controlled by money. And to rewind that back just a wee little bit, it's now it's the biggest money monger in this particular heap of swamp is actually none other than Warren Buffett, who owns the Bank of America, which whole lock, stock, and barrel owns Chatham House, which owns 50% of BlackRock. So, yeah, it's Warren Buffett's the king of the money pile, and King Chucky is the procurer of the servitude. People serve the king, and the king is got his loyal servant here now in Pierce Starmer, who also, incidentally, if you didn't really realize, was the guy that got Jimmy Savile, Jeffrey Epstein's mentor and procurer, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Yeah, the guy that trained them to be so good at the child deviance was a guy named Jimmy Savile, and Pierce Starmer got him off the hook so that the royal family, could maintain their composure and continue being, the rightful monarchs steering us, through our implied consent into the graveyard of carbon reduction. But I digress with a little bit more from Colonel Redmond.
Abattoir, all your stores, right? It's a venturi. And in every system we've got, whether it's agriculture, energy, there's venturis. We know what those are. We have lists, they're classified. We don't tell the public, but we have lists of what the critical infrastructure in every province in Canada is. As soon as we saw COVID coming, the worry is too many people get sick from COVID and we can't keep that venturi running. Not, there's one person sick, we send everybody home. That's ridiculous. And all the non-pharmaceutical interventions said you never send healthy people home, but that's what we did. So when one of our livestock venturis had the big problem last spring, what did the medical officer of health do? I never saw this coming. It came as a complete surprise. It shouldn't have. We knew they were a venturi. Are you kidding me? We sent everybody home for a 2-week lockdown. So suddenly we lost meat in our industry. How many other critical infrastructures could have collapsed like that because nobody even bothered to look at them? But that one should never have been closed. What you do is you have a surge capacity. When too many people get sick, you send more healthy ones in. Yeah, you develop some ways to try and limit the spread in that individual facility, but you don't close it. You never close your critical infrastructure. You sustain it, right? You build surge capacity. If that facility is considered too dirty, you move that production to a different facility, a temporary one, because you build a temporary one in case you lose any one of your critical infrastructures, right? That will get you through a very short period of time until you can clean that one and get back to work, 3 days, right? You never allow your critical infrastructure to fail. How dare we? We know in the electrical power grid, we know in the natural gas supply system, we know in the food supply system that there are venturis. And yet every time it came as a surprise. If you had actually done
manufactured surprise,
all 10 sectors that make up the economy in a room in February, this is coming. If it comes, because everybody was saying it might never come to Canada, but if it comes, we need to have a plan. Let's write the plan. And if it gets to Canada, we're going to issue the plan immediately. Then every Albertan knows their role. They have confidence in government and they can see exactly how they're going to get out of this pandemic all together. Not picking winners and losers. Because I'm telling you, the people that are at home dying of the heart attack don't think they're in on this all together. They're too terrified to go to the hospital and they feel alone and isolated. I believe politics has taken over, and I don't know if I should say this on camera or not, but when I'm doing presentations with doctors, with EMOs, with the public, I say these 3 words. First, there's incompetence. The incompetence of our premiers. When every premier is sworn into office, the first thing they're done is they're given a massive briefing book. You go through a whole series of briefings with your premier. One of them that every premier in our province got was from their EMO on how to handle emergency. They didn't go back to their briefing book, and they didn't have their chief of staff call the EMO into the office and say, it's an emergency, you're the emergency management officer, give me some advice. They didn't do that. Or if they did, they ignored it. So incompetence. So first of all, they didn't go back to the briefings they'd been given.
So no, he didn't stop anything because he was already retired. He was already out of everything, and he tried to help. And all he did was get buried and assaulted. So he had retired before the COVID broke out, and he did his best in his capacity at that time to step up. And now I think he realized, I mean, you don't get to being a colonel by being foolish. He realized it was not the right, he's limited. He was limited. So, I'm not letting him off the hook, but I think it's important to know his role in this. And he has continued to provide testimony since. So, yeah.
And secondly, then they chose to put the medical officer of health in charge. You never do that. In a forest fire, do you put the firefighters in charge of responding as 6 communities burn to the ground? Use Fort McMurray as an example. Were the firefighters in charge of the response in Fort McMurray? No, they weren't. The EMO was. Why? Because the firefighters are too busy fighting the fire and trying to figure out where it's going and trying to bend it, make sure it doesn't hit the 6 other communities beside. The EMO takes care of making sure there's still food in the town that's about to be burned to the ground, warning the town when it's time to get ready to pack up, working with the emergency management officer who is trained and living in that town by the act in Alberta. We have one. He's there, telling him this is what you should be doing with your community. Make sure your mayor is involved, and then sending the trigger to say, get out of town. And then when the town burns to the ground, starts the immediate recovery to build the town back, to move the people back, to keep them advised when they can go home. That wasn't the firefighters. The firefighters did none of that. So why do we believe the medical officer of health should run a pandemic? Their job is to ensure that the medical system stays is sustainable through surge capacity if required, that they give good advice to citizens on what they can do to help themselves stay healthy, to make sure that we tell citizens when they're not at risk, i.e. all of the population except those over 60 with multiple comorbidities, and why they're not, because of data from the world, right? We're not just saying it, we're backing it up with real data. All these things that should have been in the written plan that we
100% excellent comment there, Mark. Goes to show you all subversion of the Canadian infrastructure is espionage. 100% treason. Subversion of all levels of our federal and provincial MPs and associates. Kept all info from the public and the citizens. Great comment there, Mark. Thank you.
We issued right at the front. They weren't, because we've never had a plan. Incompetence at the start. The premiers, number one, not going back to the briefing book they had, and number two, putting the wrong person in charge. Then hubris. Once you've made the mistake, you're never going to admit. You're going to make sure you keep doing what you're doing, because your poll numbers are going up, which is number 3, which is self-gain. We saw the Prime Minister of Canada realize within 2 days that every time he handed out $1 billion to encourage people to lock themselves in their houses, his poll numbers went up 0.5%. He kept doing it until he got 10%. He spent $254 billion to tell people to lock themselves in their homes. Not anything to do with, economic recovery, mental health. So I'm talking $254 billion. It's reported in the press.
Terrorism and money laundering.
Lock themselves in their homes. And he gained 10 points in the polls. We took about 20 million people in Canada make up our workforce. 8.9 million of them at the peak were either on CERB or a wage benefit through their employer. We took half our economy, half were still working, but we took half our economy and hid them in their houses from a disease that probably for 99.9% of them, because they didn't have severe comorbidities and they weren't over 60 years old, had almost a 0 chance of dying of COVID. And at worst might have had a severe case of COVID in 1% of them.
If you had the chance, we can get this shown in front of the premiers, in front of the office, what would you say?
I would say, please let us help you. We've been begging to help you, both the doctors and the EMOs who aren't medical officers of health. Let us help you. Please let us help you. We know how to run an emergency. We know how to write in a plan. We know the process to bring all the right players, all of industry, all of the private sector, all of the public sector together in order to manage this emergency and to stop doing what we're doing and to make Canada a role model rather than the place you don't want to be.
And so that's, I listened to that this afternoon. again and refresh myself, but it was actually his letter that he wrote at the beginning of COVID when he first came out and spoke. That was what kicked my butt into gear in tackling the scam. I was already all over like a wet shirt or like a wet noodle on the masking insanity. After being a breathing air specialist for 15 years, that was just a crime to me on every level. So I was already fully engaged in that, but it was his testimony and letter, because nothing added up to me after my years of of being in that exact industry. Nothing made sense to me, and he corroborated for me everything that I knew that they were doing wrong. And that was when I dove in with both feet on the corruption that I saw and the evil that was within it, that was coming. And I that was, yeah, for me. I'd been expecting basically that. I'd read the lockstep report. I'd read Events 201. I'd been tracking it for a long time, but that was the point for me that's triggered me. So this is a shorter one, and we're running a little bit long. So be it. But this is a really, I think, should kind of cap basically the night off for us, and some good questions from Neil Oliver.
Beaten down our people in this country. Just how much more will people, not all people maybe, but too many people, perhaps most people, have inflicted upon them before saying enough? Is it a symptom of the madness of crowds? How much application of state power will people witness? Speak out against state policy and we'll put you in jail, while simultaneously setting free those who have committed actual real-world violence against peaceful citizens, seems to be the message now. Might it be that millions are in the grip of a condition akin to Stockholm Syndrome, when captives, victims of abusive relationships, develop sympathy or even downright affection for their captors and abusers? How else to explain why those who have systematically dismantled and cast aside the social contract between the people and the state, deliberately immiserated the middle class, heaped additional hardship on the poorest, demonized the indigenous population, strangled freedom of speech, continue to deploy propaganda and brainwashing to frighten and so coerce whole swathes of the population into a sustained state of fear and submission? How else to explain how those guilty of all of the above and more besides are still accepted as leaders and authority figures today? How many times will so many listen to Prime Minister Starmer and his party going back on their word, their promises before they were elected into office, over and over, before that natural majority says, simply and with feeling, no more of this? How many blatant breaches of trust in authority will people accept from freshly minted Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour Party before they demand his and their removal from office? Starmer warns that the autumn budget will be painful, but we all know who will feel that.
They're running out in the well of their globalists that they can trust and turn to when they pulled Starmer out, Jimmy's protector, the great pedo protector. So kind of running out of talent.
That pain, more pain, and who won't?
And they have less talent in Canada.
Over again, state hypocrisy runs unchecked. Do as I say and mind your own business. Starmer, like so many determined to call the shots, is insulated by wealth and status, by a pension protected by nothing less than an act of parliament. Why do the tax-paying citizens of this country, this admittedly divided and unhappy country, continue to tolerate the notion that while our infrastructure decays, while the cost of living soars, while the elderly are left in the cold, while the consequences of the last 4 years of deliberately ruinous policies in response to a pandemic that wasn't, policies that further enriched the rich and immiserated the rest, stripped freedom from the rest, while those consequences are shamelessly swept under the rug? Why do tax-paying, law-abiding citizens of this deliberately broken place, the home and hallowed soil of the ancestors, stand by while our billions of pounds, as yet unearned, are promised to Ukraine, a country thousands of miles away, promised to that country for 100 years if needs be, so that citizens there, those not already cold in the clay that is, might look forward to having their infrastructure rebuilt, their pensions paid, their bureaucrats' salaries paid, while Britain goes to hell in a handcart. Why is this accepted as though it was right or proper, far less wanted or approved by us? Under what hypnotic spell are millions of people sleepwalking into the cold and the dark, the inevitable consequences of yet more ruinous policies designed to enrich the rich, with subsidies for wind turbines that stand idle when the wind doesn't blow, that are routinely switched off when the wind does blow, making millions either way, for the smothering of entire landscapes and ecosystems with solar panels that do nothing in the hours of darkness, wind turbines and solar panels serving e-vehicles that are dependent for their creation upon the wholesale desecration of landscapes and ecosystems far away, the harvesting of critical earth metals dependent upon the labour of child slaves, all in the name of a so-called green agenda that seems to me to be only about greed. How much more of this deliberate destruction of the natural world, of traditions, communities, ways of life, will the millions tolerate from these ideologues determined only to impose one world government upon the billions? How much more? How much longer? That our noses are daily rubbed in just how free, just how untroubled by consequences our so-called leaders feel in saying one thing one day and then doing quite the opposite the next is bad enough. Unbearable too is how clear it has been made that seeing the wrong and calling it out troubles the wrongdoers not a jot. It's hard to avoid concluding it's intentional that we see it, learn the lesson that the powerful feel empowered now to do whatever they want in plain sight, secure in the knowledge it's their way or the highway. Are we arriving at the point where there is no truth and no lies, just what we're told today? Worst of all, though, is the looming imminent threat that one day soon it might be literally illegal to say this out loud. Free speech hangs by a thread, as inconvenient and as maligned as the truth itself. People are in jail now for words posted on social media, words deemed harmful.
They're letting out hardened criminals, rapists, murderers, gang members to make room for those that, say something the government doesn't approve of.
At least in the eyes of those who have appointed themselves unquestioned arbiters of what is harmful and what is not. Given that thousands of criminals, violent criminals among them, are set free to make space for so-called armchair rioters, those convicted of posting what the authorities now describe as unlawful content on social media, a person might feel justified in questioning the direction in which we're being headed. Starmer's Labour were elected by a fraction of the electorate. In his own constituency, Starmer got just 18,884 votes, down from 36,641 in 2019, meaning his own personal vote was halved. The turnout in his constituency collapsed from 56,000 in 2019 to 36,000 this time. Corbyn got more personal votes than Starmer. Only a third of the popular vote was for Labour, the so-called Loveless landslide. All this can be summed up by saying 2/3 of the country didn't vote for him or his version of the Uniparty. It almost goes without saying that this latest red-shaded version of more of the same has inherited the damage inflicted upon society, the economy, the hearts and minds of the people from those just like them, indistinguishable from them really, who styled themselves blue, for all that matters. 4 years ago, people were silenced and vilified for telling the truth about the likely consequences of lockdown, the consequences of the all but mandated medical interventions. What was said then by the silenced, by the vilified, has been shown to have been the truth. But the telling of the truth, the knowing of that truth, matters not. Now we have Mark Zuckerberg telling the United States he and his company were coerced into suppressing those pandemic facts and truths, that they were coerced into suppressing the truth of the Hunter Biden laptop. The truth of all that has long been known, that 50-odd figures from the intelligence community put their names to the lie that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian propaganda. But now we have it from the horse's mouth. The truth about the family of a then would-be president, truth that had it been widely known and not suppressed by those in league with Biden and his cohorts might have led to an altogether different election result in 2020. This truth is out there now, and is making no material difference, no consequences, no charges, no impeachment. We can talk openly now. I can say that, in my opinion, the war in Ukraine was not the response to an unprovoked attack by Putin's Russia. that it was the consequence of 20 years and more of NATO mission creep advancing 1,000 miles across Europe right up to Russia's doorstep, despite
Amen.
signed treaties promising it would do no such thing. Action that, therefore, you could argue provoked Putin into action, not to start a war, but to finish one. All of that was said and suppressed and silenced, but it was true then and it's true now. And yet those responsible, with the blood of hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and Russians on their hands, face no consequences whatever, while populations here, there and elsewhere continue to pay the price in pounds, euros, dollars and rubles, and also in yet more innocent blood. 4 years into this debacle, and the silencing and threatening and vilification are worse than ever. In Paris, the founder and CEO of the messaging app Telegram is detained in France, apparently awaiting charges, including, not to put too fine a point on it, refusal to let the intelligence community penetrate the encryption his customers depend upon for privacy. Other big tech platforms and the names associated with them are under attack as well, all over the world. Platforms hosting voices that told the truth all along. Turns out it's not misinformation and disinformation, the powerful fear, and would move heaven and earth to silence. It's what they call malinformation, which is more usefully described as the truth, the inconvenient truth. Here's the thing, if the millions are silent, and sadly they are, that's surely because it was the plan all along. Millions more are frightened, threatened, made aware of their own terrible vulnerability in the shadow of the powerful. For so many, it's reduced to just surviving, making ends meet. It was hard enough to speak up when the consequences were ridicule and vilification. It was hard enough when the consequences were the loss of family relationships, loss of friendships. Now the consequences of speaking up include loss of freedom itself, jail time for stating an opinion. It's harder than ever to keep heads up, but more important than ever. It's harder than ever to keep the faith, but more important than ever. We're told that he who remains silent is deemed to have granted his consent. I, for one, do not consent. Not to any of this.
And I will not be silent. So many things that he nailed there. And you know, this comment here from Jane, I wanted to pull up: US, UK, Germany, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, everywhere where democracy used to live has been under assault with the same agenda. But you know, where I started the show off with this talk about the CIA and the global censorship was 100% on the matter with what the problem is right now. France has got a problem. Germany has got a problem. They rigged the election for Starmer because they have a problem. The problem is that the people are getting educated. The truth got out there. They can no longer control it. So now it's malinformation, and they're justifying it. If they don't like it from the government, now you are the danger. So it's beyond the truth. At this point, the truth, they cannot contain it, so now they must punish the truth, and that is what Bill C-63 is about. In England, it'll be Neil that they'll come for, and others like him. In Canada, it will be me and others like me that they'll be coming for, right? And that's the point of this. And we're not talking about solutions here tonight. We covered those some of those last Wednesday, and that show has blown up and created a lot of controversy, and rightfully so. So now, to finish off with kind of a couple of little segues out of all of this, I'm only going to play the first 10 seconds of this from Sebastian, but the rest of the video is great. I encourage everyone to go and listen to it. I'll break down a couple of the points for you guys, though, in just a minute.
A smart man learns from somebody else's mistakes. The stupid man doesn't even learn from his own. Hello.
And that's the quote that I wanted out of there. Now, what he goes on to talk about actually is, the Ukraine army is getting their ass handed to them. The most significant strikes happened. It's been escalating. Russia's been making Ukraine pay for their assault on the Kursk region, and they took out a training center communications training center, basically a West Point of Ukraine and a couple of other places. So really it's really going very poorly for the NATO-backed Trudeau and Biden-backed Banderite captured government of Ukraine. It's going very, very, very badly over there for them. Zelensky is incredibly desperate. They know that they have gone too far against Russia, and Russia is making them pay for it. That's not going to stop anytime soon. And something else that Sebastian goes into here in this in a little bit greater detail, and this is him not making stuff up. He goes in and brings the receipts from Reuters, where it's apparently Russia is altering their nuclear response plan. What will they do if things escalate to a nuclear conflict? And here's what they're adjusting to in a nutshell. They're not changing their policy between Russia and the U.S., but what they are saying is if they face an existential threat from in Europe, other parts of Europe, be it Germany or one of these other Chihuahua states that NATO controls, if they step beyond Russia's red line to create an existential threat, Russia will have doctrine in order to respond with short-range tactical nuclear powers. So at that point, it's not an attack or a defense against America. That's basically saying if you guys keep this up between Germany and France and the UK, one of you guys is going to pay very dearly. And we'll see then if America really wants to get into a world terminating event. So in the meantime, Europe would be a nuclear wasteland, and America would be going, do we really want to do this? We're not getting they're not going to turn America into a nuclear wasteland. They might be thinking, but so it might be okay if Europe gets turned into a nuclear wasteland. So yeah, the bets are getting bolder, and Putin is telling them in no uncertain terms that it's not a good thing for them to continue down this trajectory. I did see a comment scroll by here about Russia being interested in taking over Canada's northern waterways. What they're more interested in is doing trade through those northern waterways. What Canadians probably haven't gotten a recent update on is the billions and billions and billions that China and Russia have been investing for more than a decade into opening up a northern passageway that cuts off about 30% of the trade of the sea trade time for between Europe and Russia and China. So this, the Great Suez Canal becomes far less relevant, and so they're opening up the Arctic waterways for more activity, and they've been reinforcing and reestablishing their northern defense perimeter. Meanwhile, Trudeau has been spending us into oblivion, emptied our military coffers, neutered our military, pissed off every other world leader on the planet, raped and pillaged all of Canada, waged biological warfare on all of us, and is possibly about to crash the economy. And yeah, so that's kind of where Trudeau, the wrecking machine, the disciple of Klaus Schwab, is probably a real hero in Uncle Klaus's book for leveling everything and making it easier for the next generation of useful meat muppets to take part in the Build Back Better process, right? So I'm not going to play this one, but I thought that this was an incredibly interesting story. If you guys aren't familiar with the Fat Plumber, go check this out. He has a really entertaining delivery, and brings up a story that most people probably didn't realize, is that Starbucks is actually the biggest unregulated bank on the planet. No rules. They got your money. You don't get a choice in the matter. You never get a refund. They got, several billion of your dollars prepaid into their banks with no rules on it. And yeah, they're free to do with it whatever they want. So Starbucks is not a franchising location. They own every single Starbucks on the planet, guys. And yeah, they got a whole bunch of billions of your money in the bank that they do whatever they want with. So very interesting story to go and check out and listen to. And the final, you probably, a few of you waiting, holding your breath, going, doesn't this guy ever shut up? This coming Thursday, we may be shutting the show down here a few minutes early. Why? Because I will be over on the Jason Levine platform. He's doing a whole bunch of shows this coming week. He put out a schedule, and on Thursday night, I'll be on there talking about all kinds of the shenanigans that we cover here, including conversation that he started in the public space here last week by bringing up constitutional conventions. So that's kind of where it's going to start. It's not going to end there, but definitely smashing some home runs out of the park. I heard from Jim Ferguson from Freedom Train International the last couple of days. He's going to be here in Canada later this month, so looking forward to that. But yeah, Thursday on with Jason Levine right after our show here, so make sure you tune in for that. Link down below. Get all of the links, everything that I cover here on my show here, guys, is included in the Substack the next day, so that everybody can go and get whatever it is, gold nugget that they choose to pursue, or a bone to chew on. And again, to remind everybody that all of the resources to reject Bill C-93 or 293, everything you need, guys, on James Roguski's Substack. He put in so much effort into this. Grateful to him for the heads up on this that allowed us to get a little bit, more organized. Chance for me to bring Lisa on yesterday and digest a bunch of this diabolical evil plan, so that we have, an opportunity, right? An opportunity to bring it together and do something significant for our community. So this again will all be on the Substack again tomorrow morning, guys. And what else do I got? Yeah, if you on Substack, everything is free, guys. I want everybody out there. It's the people, that we highlight on this show, that are taking the risk and paying the price, and the independent journalists are out there, are the ones that are the tip of the spear. Substack, everything, my content is always free on Substack. You do have the option to subscribe with a paid subscription. It's free regardless. Don't feel like you're compelled to. But if you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link there down below, a link on my Substack as well. You can pay $8 a month, I think it is, or so, 50 cents a show. And I can keep doing what I'm doing. And if you have a story, special event, something, press release, like what Lorraine sent today, that can go out, email it to me, and we can do a little bit more with more means. If you've got a special story, whistleblower, get a hold of me. And if you want to make sure that the help that you give gets 100% of it to me, that is the best way to do it. No fees, no handling fees, no platform stuff. But that's the most efficient way to help this platform stay up and in the fight day to day. I encourage you to support your most trusted journalist and people that are in the trenches for you guys every single day. And with that, that is the end of the show. Tomorrow, still kind of up in the air as to what it's going to be. Who knows? It's a crapshoot, but 6 o'clock Central, 7 Eastern. We will be here Monday to Friday. And well, if you're not familiar with some of our partners, we only have 3 partners with this program. We have New World Precious Metals, which is doing a phenomenal job of helping people get out of their bank the bank scams and into hard, tangible assets that they can move around the planet safely and without getting in trouble. And then we have Grow Towers with Juice Plus for people that wants to eat and control their food supply, and our Patriot Switch partners for everything else that we can't eat and still needs to maintain a civil, normal, tolerable, not so smelly, clean society. So with that, I love you all. Stay mighty, my friends, my family, my fellow warriors, patriots, and prisoners. Until tomorrow, I love you. Bye for now.